What's up, guys? Welcome to the Son of Wonder. Today is my top 10 MCU movies of all time. This is it. This is my coup de grace video of the best MCU films, at least in my head. So let's conversationalize. Coming in at number 10 is Captain America: Civil War. This movie is essentially a superhero party, and the dynamic between each of the superheroes in this superhero party is one of my favorite parts about the movie. As well as it having to juggle so many different plot lines, it actually did a better version of what Age of Ultron tried to do with juggling a lot of different plot lines. It did that way better. It made a lot of the things just make more sense and things just fit together better. As well as, they had to introduce two new characters. They had to introduce Black Panther and Spider-Man, and they pulled it off. And they integrated the characters into the story to where they weren't just like cameos or just, fan service characters thrown in there. They were part of the story and had something to do, and they were in the story for a reason. Same kind of goes with Zemo, as a bad guy, he had to be integrated into that story. And it was cool because you have the dynamic between Iron Man and Cap, who have opposing worldviews about what Iron Man thinks the Avengers should do and what Captain America thinks the Avengers should do. And that creates tension between them, especially what happened in Lagos with Scarlet Witch accidentally blowing everybody up with crossbones. Baron Zemo knows all of this, and he's using all of it to his advantage because he has a backstory in himself. Also, I think the twist in this movie is actually really underrated. The idea of Winter Soldier being the person who killed Tony Stark's parents, that will go down in the record books, so I really love this movie. Next up, number 9, Avengers Endgame. Now, I really do love parts of this movie. I mean, there definitely are other parts that I'm not a fan of, specifically the way they treated Thor and Hulk. They depowered Hulk from, where he was in the Edward Norton Hulk movie. He's screaming at lightning and throwing rocks at the sky. And now he's just, taking selfies and being green and, being Smart Hulk. And we don't really want to see Smart Hulk. We want to see Smash Hulk. And then Thor, I understand him being depressed, but I kind of would have liked it better if he was became a mountain man or something in the mountains and not just a fat, lazy drunk. I feel like that's kind of dealing the character a bad hand, rather than, making it kind of a cool version of him being depressed. They kind of just made it a slobby version of being depressed. I just don't think that falls in line with Thor's character. But the stuff I do love is why this movie is so high in my MCU ranking is the moments of payoff for so many different characters and really just the entire MCU in general. This will always go down in history as having one of the best final battles in the MCU history, as well as probably any movie history. Seeing all of the characters that we've come to know and love over the years come together, and then hear Cap say Avengers Assemble with a shattered shield in one hand and Thor's hammer in the other, and Mjolnir, that's always going to be awesome. Likewise, it almost brings me to tears every single time I watch Happy about to take little Morgan Stark to go get cheeseburgers because he said that her dad, Tony, liked cheeseburgers as well. That always brings a single tear. It's the subtle moments that I cry the most at. So yeah, that's why this one goes on top. Numero 8, Guardians of the Galaxy. When I first saw the trailers of this movie, I thought it looked like one of the dumbest movies ever. But when we actually watched it, it blew us away in almost every sense of the word. I think it is the best movie in Marvel as far as balancing comedy with emotion and actually blending the two together and having them work off each other. That's a great accomplishment, and this movie does that perfectly. Because that each of the characters have big emotions inside of them. That they're going through several different things. That they've been through several different horrible, horrible things that affect their personality and what they do. But because of each of their personalities and the dynamic between the characters and how they're different from each other but also have things in common, it just makes for some natural humor rather than some forced humor like the MCU has been kind of bad at, bad habit for them lately. And the emotions, even though this is a really funny movie, the emotions really pay off. When you open the movie with this, son essentially begging his mom not to die, getting abducted by Yondu, that's that's hardcore. And then they open it up with him in the, the big temple and listening to "Come and Get Your Love," "Come and Get," all that stuff just comes together so well. I think it's one of the best openings in the MCU, and everything just blends together. I think Ronan's actually a really good bad guy, so I love this one. Number 7, Avengers: Infinity War. In the same way that Civil War, like, it's just fun to see the dynamic between the characters, and then Guardians of the Galaxy, it's like it gets natural humor between them. That's what this movie is. And I think it's very interesting the way they decided to split the heroes up and which heroes they decided to pair with one another. Like, you put Doctor Strange, Iron Man, Spider-Man, and the Guardians of the Galaxy in space fighting Thanos directly, and then you have Cap, Black Panther, Bruce Banner, Natasha, Winter Soldier. It's funny which ones I'm deciding to use their superhero names and their real names. Rhodey, Falcon, all of those guys fighting the ground battle against Thanos' army. That's just interesting. That it seemed very deliberate to me which characters they paired with one another, because you got a lot of the military, king kind of stuff on the ground, and then you got the more off the cuff, kind of arrogant characters in space. And like, since it was so deliberate, the interactions with each characters is like the exact interactions you want to see. And you got Star-Lord and Iron Man just going off on each other with sarcasm, making for some of the funniest MCU moments ever. And then you got Captain America and Black Panther outrunning everybody on ground level in the army battle. And I love that scene so much every time I see it, where like you see the Wakandan army, Avengers army running toward Thanos' army, and then like Captain America and Black Panther start running out ahead of him like the super soldiers they are, and just start punching and beating down everybody even more than all the other characters are. And just, it's so cool to see all of the characters interacting with each other. Same goes for Thor, Groot, and Rocket. And it does a great job of being like the culmination of everything, and it has the guts to not end very well for the characters, which makes the movie even more heart-wrenching and more heartfelt and more memorable. Number 6, Black Panther. I've always loved this movie, and I've always cherished its story. There's just something about it, like it feels like Lion King with like real people in Africa. I think the mythology they established, as well as the rich backstory for the characters, really, really elevates this movie for me. T'Challa gets such an inspiring character arc, to where like he's the one king in the line of Wakandan kings that is willing to do something different than what his ancestors did, willing to do the right thing and help the entire world, like other people of the world, and not just be concerned with his own country. Because he really just learns, he's already had plenty of compassion for his own people, but he learns to have it for all people. Killmonger also, you really feel for the guy given his backstory. You definitely want him to be stopped, but you also feel for him. There's a nice, code of honor in the movie. Andy Serkis does a brilliant job as Ulysses Claw. I wish he would have lasted longer in the MCU. I wish he wouldn't have killed him off. It's probably one of my only gripes about the movie, but overall, yeah, this one's a great one. Number 5, Captain America: The Winter Soldier. There is not much that is not likable about this movie. I know that's 2 double negatives or double negative. I don't care. This movie's awesome. It is like the quintessential MCU spy movie, when really Black Widow should be the quintessential MCU spy movie, but it really isn't. And it's funny because I've heard people say that like Winter Soldier is a better Black Widow movie than Black Widow, and I kind of agree with them. Like, I think there's just more, I don't know, there's something about her characterization in this one, like they elevate her characterization to where, you get some backstory with her definitely in the first Avengers, but you hear some of her conversations with Steve in this movie, and then you get to know just a little bit more about her, and you feel for her more, and, kind of as the audience, you're kind of trusting her more as Cap is trusting her more. And so I think that's really cool. It's a really cool way to do things. Also, the Hydra reveal, again, will go down as one of the best in MCU history of, like, twists. I didn't see it coming, even if I should have. I totally didn't see it coming, that Hydra was a parasite inside of S.H.I.E.L.D. that whole time, as Armzola said. That whole Armzola scene creeped me out when I was younger. It's still kind of creepy. It's just because it does such a good job at revealing everything, Some people say it's just massive exposition dump, which it is, but I feel like it's exposition dump in the best way possible. Also, it tells a compelling story with, Steve Rogers standing by Bucky as his friend, even after all of the indescribably horrible things that Bucky has done, his compassion toward Bucky despite all of that is really inspirational. And so, you get that with, I think, some of the best action in the MCU, probably the best action, I would say. Like, sometimes I watch the movie just for the fight scenes, like the knife fight between Captain America and Winter Soldier. I mean, that will probably go down as one of the best fight scenes in the MCU for me. If I had 4 thumbs, this movie would get 4 thumbs up. Number 4, Iron Man, the classic. Again, there's really not a lot to dislike about this movie. It is the golden MCU film, the trophy MCU film, the one that started it all. But, I mean, even, forgetting, like, what era it came out in, what the special effects are compared to some of the special effects now. It's like, forgetting all of that, it's still just a phenomenal movie, and it's a great superhero story. Like, in my MCU ranking of all the movies up to this point, I said that Edward Norton Hulk was like the perfect Hulk movie. I think this would be the perfect Iron Man movie. I don't think you can get a better Iron Man movie, like superhero Iron Man movie, than this movie. And Robert Downey Jr., along with Jon Favreau, and really all the actors in the movie, they do such a great job of making each moment personal for Tony Stark that, you can tell what he's feeling in each moment. Even though he's kind of a complicated dude, you can tell that, like, well, he's upset about this, but he really loves Pepper, but he's really on mission. I love the dynamic of how he was this, rich, spoiled brat turned from the cave into this guy he's just on mission. Like, he says, like, there is the next mission and there is nothing else. Like, his goal, he realizes, he in the same way T'Challa did, like, he learns compassion. And he learns that he needs to be more careful. He essentially learns the with great power comes great responsibility lesson, which is essentially a lesson that all heroes need to learn. And he learns it. I mean, that definitely doesn't mean he, doesn't make any more mistakes later down the line. But, I think in his heart, he learns that lesson in this movie. Also, Obadiah Stane is a phenomenal bad guy. I think Jeff Bridges was perfect casting for him as Ironmonger, and I love the, final fight at the end. So, this movie will always be a classic because it's just generally good, regardless of an era. It's good. Number 3, Captain America, the First Avenger. Oh my gosh, this movie. I think, Captain America started out in the 40s. In the comics, he came out in the 40s. So, making it a period piece superhero movie in the way that they did, they just performed it in the best possible way they could have. It really does, it does the most exceptional job at making you feel like these events actually could have happened in World War II. Even as crazy as a guy getting, a serum to make him look like have a red skull, it kind of makes it believable. Like the way it explains its story. Also, the lesson it teaches, like the lesson that Erskine, teaches Steve a little bit, where Steve knows that he's kind of a weakling, like he's a scrawny, weak dude. I mean, he still stands up to bullies, but he's a scrawny, weak dude. But Erskine tells him how what the super soldier serum does is amplify everything that's inside. So good becomes great, bad becomes worse. And then he kind of teaches him the lesson of, like, a strong man who's known power all his life can lose respect for that power, but a weak man knows the value of strength and compassion. That is just, I get chill bumps just saying it. Like, that is just an inspirational story. And I mean, it's almost so many of the dynamics, like, him with Peggy Carter, even Steve and Bucky saying goodbye near the beginning of the movie. You already start to get the feels, especially when you know what all the stuff that happens afterward. It being a period piece, nailing the 40s vibe. Hugo Weaving, perfect casting as Red Skull. He brings up that gravitas. It's just so good. Every moment is amazing. And I love it when superhero movies can teach good lessons, and I feel like that's one of the things that, the character of Dr. Erskine, he's the lab guy. He made the super soldier serum, but in this movie, they gave him such an awesome characterization. Stanley Tucci nailed it. And so you really care when he dies. Spoiler alert, when he dies. And, the lesson is profound. It teaches that, like, you don't have to be the strongest or, the smartest. You don't have to be any of those things. It's just, if you understand what truly matters, You know, like the like Erskine said, the compassion, and you know that strength isn't everything. Strength in the heart, and strength in the mind. For me as a Christian, through the Bible, is the greatest strength, and that's your super soldier serum. The Bible is. Moving on to number 2, Spider-Man No Way Home. It's very ironic because most of Phase 4 has sucked, but I mean, Spider-Man No Way Home turned out to be one of the best MCU films, and for me, the second best MCU film. I think really just as a Spider-Man fan, it just nailed everything it could have nailed. And it's funny because like before the movie came out, like I never really thought about that much Andrew, Toby, and Tom Holland getting together, but you know, the more people were talking about it, I was starting to be like, oh my gosh, that really is like a phenomenal idea. I never really thought about that before. And then seeing it, it really was the gift that I never knew I wanted. The gift that I never knew I wanted most, in fact. And again, it's similar to how I was saying with Civil War. It's like Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, their Spider-Man are not just cameos. Like, they get these mini, like, you see the culmination of their story arcs. Toby, as you kind of see, like, you know, he's become the mentor. He's become the wiser Spider-Man, the Spider-Man that's been through more to teach, you know, these younger Spider-Man. And then Andrew, like, you know, you can tell he was lost, and you can tell he's in pain, but he's not using that pain to, you know, embitter himself anymore. He's using that pain to help Tom and keep Tom from the same pain he had to deal with losing Gwen. And then Tom, the stuff he goes through, oh my goodness gracious. I mean, as if him losing Aunt May isn't bad enough, he had to lose his identity. Like, nobody knows he's Peter. I think that's actually a greater sacrifice than dying for the world, is sacrificing literally, like, instead of dying and everybody remembers you for what you were, you live to see yourself not be remembered at all. And just be another face in the crowd, and you have nobody who loves you. You're just alone. That's really sad. And yet, Tom Holland Spider-Man, he still chooses to be Spider-Man, the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. And to me, that's what being Spider-Man is all about, and this movie represents that perfectly. And, you know, bringing back all the old villains was the perfect answer to the story arcs of Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, and Tom Holland. It only makes sense that these would be the villains that would return for them to have to battle and to have to truly conquer and defeat like unfinished business. Because I mean, you got to admit that there was a lot of unfinished business left from the previous Spider-Man movies, and this movie finished all of that business. So again, there's very few things not to like. This movie, I adore it. But coming in at number 1, numero uno, my number 1 greatest MCU movie of all time that will likely not change for a good long while is the first Avengers. And as much as I love No Way Home, I think the reason this one is number 1 is just because of its simplicity and how I think it really is just the perfect Marvel movie, the perfect MCU movie. Like, in the MCU specifically, if No Way Home is the perfect Spider-Man movie, Avengers is the perfect MCU film. I might even go as far as to say, like, other than Dark Knight, it's the perfect, like, superhero movie that leans into the superhero aspect. I mean, obviously, to me, Dark Knight is the greatest superhero movie of all time. To me, one of the greatest movies of all time. But Avengers is, like, if you want to lean into the more mythical, supernatural, like, you know, fantastical side of the superhero world, which so much of it is, most of it is, then this is the perfect version of that. I think it's aided by its simplicity. You know, Phase 1 was a simple phase. It had, you know, fewer characters to introduce and more time to do them in better ways. And this movie, I think, did actually the best job of being culmination of its predecessors, honoring the character story arcs that were established previously. Everything makes sense. I think that's actually I think this movie also contains the best version of Mark Ruffalo Hulk. Even though they did have to change actors from Edward Norton to Mark Ruffalo, I feel like the change is still left it still comes naturally. Like, you don't feel like this is a completely different character. At least not for me. Like, I feel like it is. They did a great job at, like, okay, yeah, I can see that as a continuation. And I mean, I can't tell you guys, like, when I was in theater watching this in 2012, I believe I was 8 at the time. I think No Way Home probably is the only other movie that has given me close to that specific feel that I got watching the first Avengers. Probably is the golden feel. Like, I don't know if any other movie has given me that exact one. I think that one is the best because it was just like I'd seen all these Marvel characters in these cartoons, and live action was like where it was at. I knew that, like, characters had made it big when they got into live action, and seeing all of these characters from the previous MCU movies that I had come to, I loved their interpretations in live action so much, and I thought they did such a phenomenal job. And seeing them interact with each other and fight as a team, like, that almost is kind of teary-eyed for me. It might sound crazy, but it's just, there was something about that I will never forget. Like, I will never lose that feeling of seeing them in theater for the first time, interacting with each other. That was gold for me. Also, using Loki as the villain who already had all of his backstory established in the first Thor movie, like, all you can do is add to it from there. So it's just, they set up their villain perfectly, they set up their heroes perfectly. I guess maybe the only person who kind of gets sidelined is Hawkeye because they do mind control. But other than that, I think this is, like I said, like the perfect MCU film. Complements all their story arcs. I love it. So that is my ranking of, technically all the MCU films save Eternals and Multiverse of Madness. You can check out my last video where I ranked the other, 18, I think it was. I lose track. Just there's so many now. But thank you guys for sitting through these videos. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to hit the bell to subscribe. Wow. Don't forget to hit the bell for notifications. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Have a very blessed day. May the Lord be with you. May the Force be with you. Goodbye. And that is a wrap.